My neighbor tricked me into the best 2 days of my life, and I'd let her do it again. The doorbell rang, and when I opened it, my neighbor shoved a leash into my hand. At the other end was a golden, fluffy dog with a tail wagging like a metronome stuck on fast forward. Before I could even ask a question, she smiled, said, "Hey, you like dogs, right? Thanks, you're a lifesaver." I stood there frozen, holding the leash, realizing I suddenly had a dog to take care of. At first, I was just confused. I bent down to look at the dog, golden fur, the kind of dog you'd see in commercials running through fields. He looked back at me with eyes that said, "Well, what's the plan, buddy?" The problem was, I didn't have a plan. I filled a bowl with water, dug around my fridge, and realized I had absolutely nothing dog-friendly. Luckily, I found rice in the cabinet and boiled some. The dog, who I quickly named Biscuit because he looked like warm bread, ate it happily, wagging his tail the entire time. As he ate, it finally began to sink in. A neighbor just handed me a dog like she was lending me a cup of sugar. But underneath the confusion, something else stirred. I'd wanted a dog for years. When I was a kid, my dad said we couldn't afford one. In college, my roommate was allergic. Later, my apartment leases always said no pets. I told myself over and over, one day I'll get a dog. Now here I was, sitting cross-legged on the kitchen floor, watching Biscuit lick a rice bowl clean. Maybe my one day had just arrived. By the next morning, I was all in. I posted a picture of Biscuit on social media. He had his tongue out, fur shining from a fresh bath, eyes full of mischief. I put the caption, "Meet Biscuit, my new roommate." Within minutes, the likes and comments poured in. "Finally! So cute! Take him to the park!" I thought it was a great idea. At the park, Biscuit became a star. Kids ran up to pet him, adults smiled as he trotted past, and one jogger almost tripped because they were too busy staring at him. I threw a rope toy, and Biscuit exploded across the grass like he'd been waiting his whole life for that moment. He came back, dropped it at my feet, and wagged like, "Again?" We sat under a tree afterward, Biscuit panting with his tongue hanging out, me sipping water like I'd just run a marathon too. I scratched behind his ears, and he leaned into me so hard I almost tipped over. I thought, this is it. This is the life I've wanted for years. That night, we curled up on the couch together. I made a list of all the things we'd do. Weekend trips to the lake, walks every morning before work, visits to dog-friendly cafes. My brain raced ahead. Holidays with a dog, birthdays with a dog. Even imagining introducing Biscuit to my parents. My dad pretending not to care and then sneaking him treats under the table. Because just as I was writing, "Buy Biscuit a sweater for winter," the doorbell rang again. I opened the door, and there was my neighbor again. The same woman who had shoved the leash into my hand like a secret mission baton. She looked relieved when she saw Biscuit. "Oh, thank you so much," she said, stepping inside and crouching down to hug him. Biscuit launched himself into her arms, tail whipping. She slipped an envelope into my hand. "Here's something for your trouble." "Wait, what?" I asked, frozen. "For watching him," she said brightly. "I had an emergency. You were such a lifesaver. Would you maybe be willing to do it again sometime? I can pay, of course." I stared at her, then at Biscuit, then at the envelope. Biscuit wasn't mine. He never had been. He was Scout, her dog, her family. My heart sank so fast it almost knocked me over. In a single second, all my plans crumbled like sandcastles against a tide. But then I opened the envelope. Cash. Enough to cover the toys and treats I'd bought, with extra left over. Enough to start something. Maybe Biscuit, Scout, wasn't mine. But taking care of him had been the happiest I'd felt in years. If I could keep watching him, I'd not only get to spend more time with him, I'd also start saving for a dog of my own. I smiled, even though my chest still ached a little. "Yeah," I said. "I'd love to watch him again." My neighbor grinned. "Great, I'll text you next time." When the door closed, the apartment felt empty. But it wasn't a bad empty. It was the kind of empty that meant possibility. I pulled out a jar from the cupboard, taped a piece of paper to it, and wrote in big block letters, "Dog Fund."